everybody. Welcome to Storms of Fury and Baylor, too. Yeah, meteorologist Ashley Baylor's with us today, and she's got some wonderful, wonderful things to talk about in terms of, well, where we're heading. Yeah, hard to believe that the hurricane season is coming upon us again in less than 2 months. And when we go back and look what's happened over the course of the last few years, yeah, there have been some super ones. We have, unfortunately, seen tremendous amounts of flooding and damage, and we're going to go back and review 3 of these storms today and talk about what they did and why their names are retired. And we're going to talk about, well, the upcoming season. Ashley has done an interview with the folks from Colorado State University, get an idea of where we're heading this year. But for right now, we're going to talk about what happened last year and talk about the storms that are retired now. And, yeah, we talk about the names and, you know, what goes into getting the names out and then, of course, what goes into the fact that they're retired. So let's first talk about, well, how do we name these storms? Where does it come from? And, well, our severe weather expert, meteorologist Ashley Baylor's here, and she's going to talk about, well, number one, Ash, how do we name our storms? Why do we name our storms, and then what happens when we go and retire them?
Well, certainly, Joey, the reason that we name the storms is because there can be several hurricanes going on at once. So it's really important to name them so we know exactly which hurricane people are talking about. There was a great Dr. Seuss book called Oh Say Can You Say What's the Weather Today that actually dives into that and talks about
well, how about that?
why we name them. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Yes. But we do not decide the names because, trust me, if we did, we'd work on some of those names that were maybe a little easier to pronounce. They're not all the easiest ones to pronounce.
Right, yeah, I know. We're taking a representation of all around the world,
we
right?
Are.
And sometimes it's not where even hurricanes occur, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you didn't know this, there are actually 6 lists of hurricane names. I'm going to go ahead and pop them up for you right here. This is the 6 list right in front of you. And so last year, we started with Alberto, and you can see those red lines through Beryl, through Helene, and through Milton, because those are the 3 names that were officially retired as of last week. And again, we don't make that decision when it comes to what names go on the list and which ones get retired. That is up to the World Meteorological Organization. And they're also the ones that come up with new names. So as of last week, there are now 73 remaining names of the original 132 names. And you can see Milton was just introduced, Joe, in 2018. So Milton was relatively new. That replaced Michael, if you remember. That's the one that hit Panama City.
Right. And then as far as Helene, it's interesting. Helene and Beryl go way back in terms of names.
Yeah, I can't remember last.
I mean,
I've used Beryl how many times?
Right, exactly. And I think Helene goes back to like 1967 or something like that.
1979.
79? Oh, 79.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Shows you what I know. All right. Oh, speaking of which, you talked about books. Real quickly, talk real quick about the book you have.
Oh, my book?
Yeah. Come on, we got to get that out there. Let's go.
We got to do a shameless plug. So my book is Storms and Snow, Skis and Socks, New England's Weather Truly Rocks, which talks about the different types of weather that we see here in New England. But because I also love talking about New England destinations, and sometimes we throw in some animals and weather facts and a little bit of sports.
Yes, yeah, there we go. Socks. Yeah. She's not talking about the socks you wear.
No, that's with the X on the end of it. We're talking about the Red Sox, who, by the way, have been sweeping the Cardinals.
Talking about numbers putting up. 13 and 18 runs. That's impressive.
I know, I tell you.
All right, well, talk about impressive numbers. We can talk about, well, Beryl, that happened back in early July last year. A storm that kind of, well, it came into the main development region of the Atlantic. It came across into the Gulf and then moved across. And, well, it kind of was a little bit surprising in terms of what it did. It was a Category 1 storm, but it, came into Texas. It knocked out power to about 3 million people. It caused a lot of damage. It caused a lot of flooding. It only had highest winds of 80 miles per hour. But, you know, in terms of these big storms, the flooding is the biggest thing, Ash. And, you know, what's interesting, I was down in Florida during the course of a couple of weeks ago, and there right at Sarasota and so forth, Longboat Key and so forth. And I was talking to actually the father of the bride, my wife's goddaughter. He got wiped out from hurricanes last year, and he has hurricane insurance, but hurricane insurance doesn't cover flooding. Which is it's mind-boggling. So he got wiped out because the water came in. But if his roof got ripped off and torn apart by wind, he would have got covered. But inside it's just there's no flooding.
And of course, where you're going to get most of the damage is usually from flooding.
Flooding,
That's
yeah, exactly,
where
yeah.
we see the biggest loss of, unfortunately, life. It's where we see the biggest property loss is from the storm surge and from the flooding. So,
right. So, that's something to keep in mind if you happen to have hurricane insurance. Okay, so Beryl came in to Texas there. It wasn't a really good hype storm. It caused a lot more damage and power outages and flooding than expected. But then it went up through the midsection of the nation and caused tremendous problems with tornadoes and right up into northern New England where they had flooding. They had tornadoes. We got lucky that storm stayed to our north, Ash, because we could have ended up with a big problem down here. And that's, again, remnants. Remember Isaias that came up out of the Gulf straight inland, and it kept its tropical storm characteristics and power and knocked a lot of power out around here.
Now, I would say, we lost power here. Could have been a lot worse, that's for sure. But when it comes to how bad flooding can really be and the true power of water, we got to talk about Helene.
So Helene, when you talk about, look at this. When you talk about the sure devastation, but the idea for 88.9 degree water temperatures as this storm came in, and when you look at what nature can do, it's frightening. You're in awe of what you see. And folks' lives are just turned upside down. And when you look at what this storm did in terms of its movement up through into North Carolina and what it did there in the Asheville area, people's lives are changed forever. And it's just the flooding that is what did it, especially up through the Carolinas.
I think the realization, not only when we're talking about Helene and what it did to North Carolina, but how it hit Florida first, went into North Carolina, interacted with another storm. I think what we're realizing here is that these places are probably never going to be the same, is that these storms have permanently changed the landscape.
Yep.
Florida to a degree, but I would say this one especially into the mountains of North Carolina.
Well, yeah, and who would think you're living up on a top of a hill and a mountain and you're getting swept away by flooding? So much for being on higher ground. So Helene, coming up there, we had big high. Ash, when you look at last year and you look at all these tropical weather systems that came up and how they all turned out or got blocked and never came here. We got extremely lucky last year. So many tropical weather systems, but none of them, even in the remnant form, made it here. All the way from Beryl, that stayed to the north, Helene, that got knocked to the south, other ones that get pushed out to our south and east. And so I guess the big question will be a drought or dealing with something like the folks dealt with down south. I think we'll take a drought.
I think we'll take a drought, that's for sure. Now, of course, I threaded the needle, actually, between Helene and Milton, because Helene hit Florida 1 week. There was about a week and a half off, and then they got hit by Milton. I happen to go to Florida. I happen to be on the west coast of Florida between those two storms.
That's right. We were talking about you going down there. Yes.
And it was incredible to me. As meteorologists, we see the damage. We understand what it goes into, not only predicting a hurricane, but how to prepare for one. But when you go down after something like Helene and Milton is hit, it really opens your eyes to saying, these places will never be the same. And I don't want to have to say something like that. It sounds really grim. It sounds really almost morbid in a way. But the reality is, even if you can clean up 70% of what a hurricane has done, Joe, even if you get to that 70%, we know the next one is waiting in the wings. It may not be for a year or 2 or 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Sometime it is going to happen, and it's going to destroy everything you've probably fixed.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened with those storms. Some people got a little bit back to after the storms years prior. Let's
actually check out Milton. Let's check
out Milton to see what we saw here with Milton. It's amazing, Ash, when you have so many storms like this, you tend to, those that have not been there and experienced it, and when you go down and you see it, you see video and you see stuff like this. It doesn't do any justice, correct, in terms of what you really see when you go there.
No, and you probably saw it at Longboat Key. I mean, think, we up here talk about snowdrifts being, a few feet high. Sometimes if you get the right wind.
Yeah.
Down there, it's the sand drifts.
Sand drifts,
that are 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, I had a sand right on the beach I was on. It was above me, and then it's amazing to see structures that are not there anymore as well. So again, all about the flooding. It was a setup here that was one that had an extremely warm Gulf of Mexico. Now, one thing to note, the Gulf of Mexico last year started out this time with the temperature up in the 80-plus range. Now, a few weeks ago, it was in the 60s, and now all of a sudden it's going up to 80 degrees.
Yeah, it's going up quickly.
It's going up real fast. So that gives you an idea sometimes of the depth and so forth. So what are we going to do this year? What do we have coming on? And the other thing too is that we have done hurricane specials here at News 8.
And you can check them out, by the way.
And you check them out, yeah. And so we need, all of us here in Connecticut need to have a plan, especially you guys along the coast. We saw what happened with Irene and what happened with Sandy. And by the way, when you go back, Ash, to that time period where we had Irene, and then we had the big snowstorm in October, and then we had Sandy, and then we had the big snowstorm in February. All times when the huge sunspots were happening back then. Then we quieted down. Now we're back to that again, and we're seeing that in the last year or so. Big storms, big problems this past weekend.
Yes.
The catastrophic flooding out to the west. So the extremes in weather, they're frightening. There's something that we need to talk more about, and unfortunately, we've got another hurricane season coming up. So as you said, people trying to get back to normal, they haven't even gotten back to normal from this past year or last year. What are we doing this year?
Right. So this year, when we come right back, we got to talk about Colorado State University's forecast. They're usually the first ones to put out their Atlantic hurricane season outlook. Looks like it could potentially be another active season. We'll be right back with that.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Here we are now, moving quickly towards the new hurricane season. Keep in mind, Beryl last year, early July, kind of snuck in, did a lot of damage, and everybody kind of forgot about it, didn't say much, and then the season started ramping up, especially as we went into August, September. So now this year, we're talking about, what could be another extreme year, and our friends from Colorado State University have compiled their idea of what may be happening down the road. Our severe weather expert, Ashley Baylor, can also give her ideas on this as well. But Ashley, what is the 2025 hurricane season outlook from the Colorado State University?
So Colorado State University is anticipating another potentially active season. We always have to say potentially because nothing is a guarantee. But this year they are expecting 17 named storms. Of those 17 named storms, 9 could become hurricanes and 4 of them could become major hurricanes. That means winds over 111 miles per hour. Now compare that to 2024, fairly on par with that because last year we got 18 named storms, 11 hurricanes, 5 of which became major hurricanes. So last year was a little above average. I think at one point, Joe, it seemed like it got quiet for a while. It got quiet through July and August.
And then all of a sudden,
it ramped right back up. So even if we kind of go through the early part of the season with not much action, it's not really a time that you start to kind of let your guard down, if you will. And let's take a look at some of the names because we were just talking about some of the retired names. So let's look at the names for this upcoming season. So, probably before you know it, Joe will be talking about Andrea.
Of course. Yes, exactly. And that, we look down in the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico for the early storms to happen. So Aaron Fernand, is that how we say that? Gabriel?
Fernand, yes.
Humberto.
Umberto's
been around
yes,
a lot in the past.
I feel like Imelda's new.
Imelda, yeah. Imelda doesn't Jerry? I don't know if we have had Jerry. Karen? Hopefully, we're
we have a couple of these names that work here.
We do, right?
And we don't want to see them become a Category 5 either.
No. Well, and we certainly don't want to get down to Rebecca and Tanya and Wendy because there's years where we went through the whole list. Now, by the way, we do not go to the Greek alphabet anymore, do we? We go to a new set of names if we get through the first list.
Is that what it is?
I think it's a new list that's out. Yeah.
Well, because originally, if you had gone through the entire list of names, it would go to the Greek alphabet, but it's very tough because what if you have to retire alpha, beta,
right, exactly. Yeah,
gamma, delta? We can't really retire the Greek alphabet.
So the big question right now, we talk about the number of storms and so on and so forth, but how can we figure out what exactly the weather pattern is going to be and where are these storms going to go and what's going to happen? Again, I maintain we got so lucky up here that we did not have these systems come up here because of our weather pattern. The big highs down was the big block, and these storms, remnant form especially, never made it. So, well, I know it's too early, but we just don't know what the pattern setup's going to be. So that's why we say here in Connecticut, we're sitting out. We can get these hurricanes up here, and the last official hurricane to happen here, believe it or not, Ash, is September 27th, 1985, Gloria. That hit at time of low tide. That was a Cat 5 out in the Atlantic. By the time it got here, it was a Cat 1. Yeah, Sandy should have been a hurricane. That was a whole big debacle that one. That was
and then
that
was given the name Superstorm.
Superstorm, that was
not
just
really
ridiculous.
A thing.
Yeah, right. So yeah, what are we thinking down the road in terms of the setups and what might happen as far as where these storms are going to be?
As far as when Colorado State University makes this forecast, what they're going to be looking at is climatology. What are we going into? First, what they're going to start off with is the ENSO. They're going to start off with ENSO.
Which is the do we have El Nino or is it neutral? Is it positive? Is it negative?
Yes.
So where are we this year?
Well, so this year they're big in the fact that we're not expecting an El Nino,
which is not good.
Yeah, that's not good because typically when we have an El Nino summer, it suppresses the storms. It actually keeps them from developing. So what it does is when we have an El Nino year, usually the winds are stronger. So if you have wind shear, these storms can't stack up. They actually can't even form because the shear is tearing them apart essentially. So the less wind, even though hurricanes themselves are very, very windy, obviously, they don't like the wind working against them as they try and stack up and build up.
They take their fuel, that 80-plus degree water, and the big thunderstorms form, the circulation forms, and we end up with a potentially catastrophic situation. So in terms of where we're at, it's definitely something that we here at News 8, at Storm Team 8, are analyzing all the time, trying to figure out what's there. But the one thing we always want to emphasize is that I think a lot of folks here in Connecticut kind of feel like, well, those storms are down south, and they're really not maybe a problem for us. But what about the hurricane in 1938?
Well, that was a problem. Luckily, I did not live through that. But, I hear a lot about it. It was kind of a benchmark for up here in New England for how rare a Category 3 actually hits up here. And it's very different. I had this discussion with the folks from Colorado State University. When a Category 3 hits a flat place like Florida or hits anywhere along the Gulf of Mexico, they get days and days and days in advance of notice that, hey, you could be in the cone of uncertainty. You could be at risk. This is probably the time to start thinking about a potential evacuation and kind of get everything in order.
Right.
But for us up here, it's very different. By the time we are looking at it to potentially hit us in New England, it's starting to get picked up by the jet stream, and it's going to be moving at 30, 40, 50 miles per hour.
Exactly.
So our prep time sometimes has to be before the storm has even hit somewhere else.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Very good point. And I think the hurricane in 38 was moving about 60 miles per hour.
Yeah. So in that case, you're trying to get a lot of people out.
Right.
With somewhat little notice.
Yeah. And keep in mind, you know what the forecast for that day was? Showers and breezy. It certainly was breezy.
Technically was.
It technically was. But that was an example. Just 80-plus years ago, we didn't have satellites. We had really no idea. Now, there were some people from ships and so forth that were saying, hey, there's a huge storm down there. Yeah. And they were like, this could be coming up. But heads of the National Weather Service and so forth didn't buy it. And they were wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the questions I get so much, Joe, is, when we bring up climatology and bring up hurricanes of the past, you get a lot of people that say, we're seeing more hurricanes than ever, they're stronger than ever. But here's what's really interesting, and you'll hear this from a lot of scientists out there, is that are there necessarily more? No. Satellites have changed. They've had huge upgrades over the last, I'd say, 10, 20, 30 years. So think about 1938, before the satellite era. But even getting back into the 70s and 80s, even then the satellites weren't great. So they weren't able to see these small little weak storms that we can see now. So they may have always been there, but we just didn't see them. So that's why it's a little bit of a misconception to say, oh, we're seeing more hurricanes. No, we can literally just see them better now.
Right, exactly. And so we'll name something way out there in the Atlantic that's not near anybody.
Lives for 48
hours. Right, exactly. Yeah. So, but that's satellite meteorology. So in terms of a storm like the Hurricane of 38, by the way, waves were so big into southeast Connecticut, Rhode Island, crashing so high, in some cases 30 feet, seismographs were picking up the movement of the earth.
Oh, man.
Which is wild. And structures from places like in Stonington, Connecticut, were found 2.5 miles inland. Pieces of structures 2.5 miles inland. Katharine Hepburn, she should have been swept away. She was not. There in Fenwick section of Old Saybrook.
I love that golf course.
Right?
I love seeing her place there.
It's a wonderful spot. So it's just something that here in Connecticut we need to keep in mind. And the other thing, Ashley, unfortunately, all these big trees with the what I like to call toothpicks with wires on them, we've got a huge problem there as well. With a tropical weather system coming through here. I mean, look at what Sandy did, what Irene did. You're talking about close to 1 million power outages with these storms, and they weren't anywhere near the Hurricane 1938.
Right. Imagine even what a direct category 1 or 2 would do.
Right.
I mean, you would have power outages for quite a while. I mean, yes, you probably have a little bit of better prep, but it's so fascinating to me that we kind of sit here in New England kind of waiting for the next one. Anything up here, I don't want to say catastrophic. Category 3 certainly would be, because we have more forestation up here than they do in a place like Florida or Louisiana. We have a denser population here. We have far more structures. It's different for us up here. It's a different animal altogether.
Right. Yeah, it's a catastrophe waiting to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, and think of trying to get all these. Think if you had to completely evacuate Manhattan.
No.
I couldn't even express the words.
But look at what happened with Sandy.
Yeah.
Right.
I was in New York City the day before Sandy.
Sandy. Now, what was happening there? And who was giving them the weather information? I have no idea. But the mayor was coming on and saying, "Well, we're not that concerned about the storm," even the day before. Correct.
And I remember watching that press conference.
Right.
And I said,
"What is going on here?" Yeah.
He doesn't have a lot of faith in the meteorologists that are saying, nope.
No. We got to get it. So I know some meteorologists got to him, Jim Cantori at the Weather Channel and so forth. So, by the way, you know the story about the drill they did in 1997 for New York City and Long Island, New Jersey? They said, what if a storm comes up, a big hurricane, takes a left-hand turn, goes into New Jersey? What's going to happen?
So they did a drill.
Well, they did a drill, yeah. But you know what the drill was? The drill, 1997, was headed by a woman. A woman. She was the head. And you know what her name was? Sandy. So the drill was called Hurricane Sandy.
Stop that.
Yes. 1997, Hurricane Sandy, the drill for coastal Connecticut, Long Island, New York City, New Jersey. The big drill in 1997, the name was Hurricane Sandy.
Why am I just hearing about this?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
It's just like finding out the name Beryl was a female name.
Ashley told me that. Said, Beryl, Joe Beryl's a female. I said, no, that's not. I had no idea either. Yeah. So anyhow, so that was the drill in 97, and 2012 came around, and it happened. So.
Well, and we don't say any of this to panic anybody, because even though we talk about another active season, sure, it increases the risk of landfalling hurricanes. It absolutely does, but it's never a guarantee. Take 2010 for an example. 2010, you had 19 named storms. You had 12 hurricanes. You had 5 major hurricanes. Yet none of them made landfall.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I think that happened back in 95 too.
Was it 95?
Yeah, 95 is another one where they all stayed out. They stayed away.
Yeah.
So that goes all to the pattern setup. So that's what we don't know at this point in time, because we can't even get the next day right. So. But
then you can't even put to sleep even the potentially below active seasons or below average seasons, because you take back to 1992, the year I became interested in weather, by the way, if we really want to throw it back. But 1992, the first named storm, Andrew, happened late August. There were only 7 named storms that year, but one of them was Andrew.
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah. And you made the point too about last year. It seemed like well, what's going on? There's not much going on. I thought this was going to be an active season.
Yeah,
Remember?
so the guard starts coming down.
coming down,
ever so
and then all of a
slightly.
sudden,
Oh!
boom. Yep.
Right
and
back
so,
up.
so that's So about Andrew, that was. And that was
something else.
That was a storm that was just developing not far offshore, and the initial forecast was for a Cat 1. Well, ended up being a Cat 5. That didn't work
quite
so
go
well.
that way. And Andrew was basically what got me interested in weather because I was a military brat, so I was living in South Carolina, just outside of Charleston, when Andrew hit. So we kind of got the outer bands of Hurricane Andrew.
Right,
We didn't
right,
even come
right.
close to taking a direct hit. But I remember just watching the coverage, experiencing the rain, experiencing the flooding, and thought, this is the coolest job ever.
Oh,
And it just
I'm totally with you on
ignited my
that.
love
Yeah,
for it.
I just funny you say that because I take it back a little earlier because I'm a little older than her, a whole lot older than her. Was the tropical storm Doria back in 1971, and I made my father get in the car and drive around so I could see everything, which was not very smart, but it was but that was
Meteorologists don't always make the smartest moves anyway.
That was my
We stand out in
storm.
everything.
That was my storm. 10 years old. Yeah, as a matter of fact.
You know what, Joe? I think to actually get a better picture of this, let's talk about how hurricanes form. So let me bring up this graphic right here. So what needs to happen to allow hurricanes to form? Well, number one thing, you need water temperatures that are around above 80 degrees. That's why they form where they do, because it's really warm water. And for this year specifically, one of the reasons they're calling for an active season is because we are seeing warmer than average sea surface temperatures. So then what happens from there? Then you get the water that evaporates. It creates this warm, moist air that fuels more development. You get these converging winds, and that's forcing the air upwards. So then you get this warm, moist air that rises. It condenses into these large clouds. And then you get the winds that start to blow in a circle. And they're blowing counterclockwise, by the way, in the northern hemisphere. So you basically start off with a tropical wave, then it becomes a tropical depression, then gets more organized, becomes a tropical storm. That's when it's given its name, and then eventually could become a hurricane if it can stay together and stay away from dry air or wind shear, as we were mentioning, that could tear it apart.
What's interesting too, you mentioned that in order for a hurricane to form, there has to be no wind. So the no wind environment is conducive
It
to
sounds a
a
little
big
funny.
wind environment.
Yes.
And then the other thing too is that you've got to have a big ridge of high pressure to the north so that you've got the right upper atmospheric setup so that the storm can feed off of that. So the big high sitting to the north, where the high is in the Atlantic, has a lot to do with what's going to happen down the road. So, and what happened last year, Ash, is that the big high went out towards Portugal and stayed out there for a while, and that's why things all of a sudden calmed down. But keep in mind, we always talk about storms coming off the African coast. But a lot of times we call it the homegrown ones are the ones that can be the worst, the ones that happen close to us.
Yeah. And of course, close to us, we don't even want to see a Category 1 here. They can handle them a little bit better down to the south. We don't handle them as well here. So we're looking at the Saffir-Simpson scale here. What does it mean? Category 1, winds ranging 74 to 95 miles per hour. Then you get up to a Category 2. That's when the winds pick up to 96 to 110 miles per hour. Category 3, like the hurricane of 1938, that's when coastal flooding is likely. Major damage to homes, winds between 111 to 129 miles per hour. Then you get up to a Category 4, winds pick up between 130 to 156 miles per hour. Then you're talking about flooding to homes near the coast. I mean, you really get that water that pushes on shore. And that's where you see people that sometimes have to get to the roofs of their homes if they didn't evacuate. We call that a vertical evacuation. And then you got Category 5, winds over 157 miles per hour.
Yeah, but that water is tremendous. I was talking to somebody down in Florida with Helene, and they were close to a mile away from the water, and they had water in there
I believe
where
it.
they are.
Yeah, I absolutely believe it.
So,
all right. So
what's interesting is that you talked about the Category 3. The storm surge height of the water with Sandy was up in that Category 3 range. And that's part of the reason why we had such a huge, catastrophic damage flood situation from a storm that should have been called a hurricane and not a superstorm.
Right. All right. Now, you look at us as experts, but there are people out there that put these forecasts together. They're the true experts. They're the ones kind of behind the scenes that are deciding, okay, is it going to be an active, regular, average, or maybe somewhat of a quiet season? Well, we leave that up to the tropical research experts. So when we come back, we're going to be speaking to a grad student. He is on the tropical research team at Colorado State University. He's going to kind of break down exactly why they anticipate a potentially active season, and we're going to hang back and say, we hope your forecast is wrong. Not that we don't believe you, but
right.
Sometimes we don't necessarily want to see these active seasons.
Exactly
come
right.
To
yeah,
fruition.
we don't get any pleasure about seeing death and destruction. That's not nice. Little snowstorm is fine, but this whole season coming up, tornado season's one thing, but the hurricane season is a whole different story.
Yeah, I've said it on air before, and Joe, you can put this somewhere. We want to root for people. We don't want to root for storms.
Exactly right.
All right.
Exactly right. Okay.
We're back.